We're here today in the record shop talking to my very dear friend Chantel Thompson, Larry Stafford, Spencer Evans. Sitting here talking to Alex Vizia. Here, Gary the Valley, here today with Larry Stafford, local musician, sound guy, and all around good dude. He's offered to come in and chat with us today about his music career, and we got some questions here for Larry. First off, thanks for coming.
Well, thanks for having me. I do like to talk about music and my past in music, so I'm always open to these ideas.
Well, you were around long before I got here. When did you actually start playing music for the first time?
Well, music, I started in grade 6 in public school, so that's in the mid-50s, and stayed with playing trumpet right through high school. But as far as bands, I got interested in being in a rock band. Actually, some friends convinced me that I should take some piano lessons and start playing in rock bands around 1964, I believe. So some of my friends were already playing in rock bands at that point, but I just got in around 64.
So what were some of the artists that influenced you early on?
Well, my very first band was called the Banshee, and they were already together when I joined, so we were picking commercial songs right off the radio. I recall The Association, Spencer Davis, Vanilla Fudge. Started to get a little heavier with that sort of thing. Yeah. And that band was reasonably short-lived, and then I got the opportunity to jump into a band called the Varmints, which at that time was pretty much on top of the band scene in Kingston.
Wow.
Some of the members were moving to Ottawa to join the Marshmallow Soup group, and so I jumped in and took over on keyboards, and we added Tim Harrower as the singer, frontman singer, and that band played a lot, and I think got a lot tighter, and but still doing mostly covers, a little bit more starting to lean towards R&B in the early days, which was my thing. I really liked that.
Yeah, so. You like the I know you like the horn style crossover bands yourself, and I could see posts online supporting Chicago and some of the groovier keyboard players that you like to Jimmy Smiths and the Jimmy McGriffs and the.
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of the Hammond organ, the B3, and actually, I gotta be honest, I've never owned a B3 in my life, but I did have a Hammond for a while, but I had a lot of, I always used a Leslie tone cabinet to give you the Hammond type swirly speaker effect.
You gotta have one of those.
You do. And then playing trumpet again, having played all through school, that was a natural transition when we joined Chris Harvey and I, Chris on sax and myself on trumpet, joined a band called the Soul Mine that was already going. They were playing some pretty obscure stuff for the time, but some standard James Brown, that type of thing. But then we'd got into some pretty rare R&B early on. Always followed a lot of Canadian influence. We loved the Mandela with Dominic Torano and those kind of bands were the big thing in Toronto at that time. So we started playing some of that, and it was always amazed me that you could play these songs and you knew that the kids you were playing them for had never heard them in their lives. Yeah. And yet they appreciated it and started to gain an interest in that. George Oliver and Natural Gas was a band that we, in Street Noise, when I got into Street Noise, we played a bunch of that.
He's still playing, I think.
He is. George is still doing the splits at about, I don't even know how old, I won't say. But we always had the Canadian influence. Lighthouse was big with us too.
Yeah.
I mean, we did the Chicago and the Blood, Sweat and Tears stuff too, but we like to stretch out, and especially into the Canadian area. So,
yes.
So I've worked. I've played in bands ever since. I never really quit at any point in time. I think the longest I've been out of a band since 1964 would be maybe a year.
Yeah.
And I did a little bit of playing during that year probably too. So I've always been in a band where a lot of guys got out to seek their career, or whatever, or marriage or family raising, things like that, and then jump back in later on, because once you got the music bug in you, you know yourself as a musician, it stays with you, you know.
Well, now you're more of a behind the scenes guy. I see you working the boards at the various locations around town, the Grand Theater. You're a staple in the music scene, even though you're not as active playing.
Yeah, well, there isn't as much playing, and again, for the kind of music that we were just discussing, I think that there's been another transition in music that's just old enough that a lot of the people you're playing for today don't remember it at all.
Oh, you could start playing retirement homes soon.
Yeah, I could. I know lots of local guys that do, and hats off to them for doing that too, you know. It's appreciated, I'm sure.
So, going back in time a bit, what do you remember was possibly your first record that you bought? Do you know?
I do know. Actually, you were right. It was jazz. My dad was a jazz trumpet player and big band enthusiast, and so I listened to all his records as a kid. And I got into the big band thing before I got into rock. When my friends at school were all listening to rock and roll, like Chuck Berry and things like that, I was still listening to Benny Goodman and Glenn Miller. And the first record I bought was a song called, now I won't remember who did it either, Manhattan Spiritual. I looked this up not too long ago.
Okay.
And second 45 I bought was Jimmy Dorsey, So Rare, which was actually a song on the hit parade on the radio, which was rare for a jazz player to be on the radio in those times because it was all rock and roll.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, those were the first two 45s I bought, and the first LP I purchased was Bobby Rydell's Greatest Hits.
Oh, okay.
I just had a link to him. I had an older brother and sister who were buying a lot of records. My sister was a big Jimmy Rogers fan, and my brother was a Ray Charles fan. So I listened to a lot of that stuff. And then I started buying my own and finding my own interests.
Nice. So your family has a history in the Kingston music scene as well. Your father owned a music store, is that correct?
He did. My dad was in the Army during the wartime and left the Army in 1947, I believe. And he taught trumpet at the very first music store in Kingston, which was called Harmony Hall on Bagot Street. And then they closed that business, so he decided it was time to make the big move and opened his own music store right on Princess Street, 268. And he was there for, I should know, but around 30 years.
Oh, that's established.
So, I started working there. Of course, this was coming up right through the time of the Beatles, and every kid on every corner played in a band, so guitar sales and things like that were huge. Yeah. And I started working at my dad's store when I was 15, so I got to meet a lot of the local musicians of the time. I wasn't playing yet, of course. This is before I started playing, So, but that obviously lent to my getting into playing in bands.
Yeah, you get really immersed when you work in the store. You meet all the musicians and chat them up and find out what's going on. One more question then. Is there anything current, anything new that's catching your ear these days?
Well, once in a while I hear things that I like, new. I don't listen to radio a lot these days, but I do a lot of internet radio type listening. As far as Canadian groups and things, that I'm always big on the Canadian talent. I particularly like the Arkells as a band that I've seen and really enjoy. They just have an energy. I like a band that has to look like they're having fun on stage to appeal to me, and those guys party all the time. The Trues is another band like that, where it's high energy and just a lot of fun to watch. They're having fun, and the crowd has fun along with it. So that type of thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. It really helps when the band is enjoying it. I would say Arcade Fire were a band
Mhm.
I would say kind of
Yep.
falls into that group as well.
Yes,
Just
they did.
really kind of putting it up there on stage and getting the audience a great show.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, Larry. It's
Oh,
been
thanks.
really great chatting. I really appreciate you spending the time here at Zap today with us to make our short YouTube videos. Thank you, Brent, and thank
Well,
you,
thanks.
Larry.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for doing these projects that involve the advancement of music. Let's
Yeah.
say.
Cheers.